One of the problems I found and I faced over the sort of 20 years I've been teaching is that teaching traditional Silat, people do ask, does this work on the street? How is this applicable, with the outfits and the whatever? And then the other question is, does it work against the jab cross? And in the sort of modern take is that a lot of people have done some MMA training or some Thai boxing or some boxing. They'll throw a jab cross or they'll play around with the jab cross. So sort of traditional Silat not saying it doesn't work so well against that, but it's not geared up to fight that. I was taught it's against a sort of right-handed stab with a kris. So you have to kind of moderate what you're teaching for the market that you're going to have, I think. So over the last 7, 8, 10 years, something like that, I've been working on being able to deal with the type of arts that you're going to deal with or have to fight in the West. So sort of the kickboxing, punch kick, type combination, so jab cross, round kick, as opposed to someone who's going to try and work out your footwork and take time. It's someone's going to walk in and try and punch you in the face. So that's kind of where the Puklan came in. Lankamati is actually a Silat Lincah principle. Lankamati means killing footwork, killing steps. So the idea is that you position yourself in a way that you disadvantage your opponent, so you kill their footwork. Puklan, Lincah is a Puklan style of Silat. So it's partly for that, but also partly for Paflor as well. So it's the sort of the merging of the Lincah principles and the Puklan. One of the things I like about the two is that Lincah explains some of the Puklan to me, and the Puklan Madura has explained some of the Lincah to me, so it helps me get a better understanding of the two arts. So what I've done is I've kind of created more drills and also things that I can use to teach children as well. So we use more focus mitt drills now than I've ever done and I've done in Silat over the years. So it's more, the starting part of it is more of a kickboxing art, so that I can teach children, I can teach young girls without them worrying about getting hit and getting hurt, and to enable people to learn what is essentially a relatively serious combat art in a safe environment. I've come across lots of styles of Silat where it's very full on, very aggressive, and then you teach small groups and people get hurt. And I want to open that up to a wider public so that people can come and train in a aggressive fighting combat art without getting hurt. Bringing the two arts together was one of the things that I worked on with Paflor. So what we did was we went through kind of the whole of my syllabus, and I showed him what we would do in sort of the Malaysian aspect to it, and he showed me how he would essentially Puklanize that. There is a lot of conflict between sort of Malaysian Silat and Indonesian Silat in terms of kind of claiming superiority, if you like. Paflor was very open and very kind, so he didn't have any issues with that. And so we worked through to show how you would do my techniques in a sort of Puklan way. When I was in Malaysia in March, we were talking to Mahugu and I was explaining to him some of the changes I've done over the last few years. And he was explaining to other people that in the West, people seem to have more of a desire to learn sort of the Puklan side, the fighting side of it, without learning the art. So he had an understanding that in the West, you kind of have to teach it differently to get the audience. Something I struggled with initially when I was trying to teach Silat traditionally. And you end up with a class of 5 people and nobody really wants to train. And over the last few years, I've kind of changed it and blended it a little bit more to give people those sort of options. So generally, I don't think there's been an issue with it. Mahogany seemed happy with it, and Paflor taught me with that in mind. Bringing stuff back from Malaysia and trying to sort of teach the traditional side has been quite hard. Trying to then synthesise that into kind of a Western philosophy and Western culture, again, it's taken me quite a long time and a long journey. One of the main things for me in Silat is the humility. So one of the issues you get is people saying, well, you're not very humble when you're out there trying to promote the art. But that's one of those, I am who I am, and I try to be as humble and as kind and as compassionate and as generous as my teachers were with me, while still trying to be the standard bearer for Silat Lincah in Europe. Traditional training in Malaysia is usually done at night, so people do their daily stuff, have dinner, and then train sort of later on in the night. A lot of the meditative stuff, the spiritual stuff that I did with Mahaguru, we kind of did after midnight. A lot of the physical training was done from sort of 8 o'clock onwards, sometimes till 2, 3 in the morning. On one occasion when I was there, I actually slept while 2 of my students were training. And I wasn't asleep, I was kind of, you've got an ear open. But they were training all night, because we were there for a very short period of time. And I'd kind of wake up to explain translations and then things to them. But it's done outdoors a lot. One of the things they don't understand is why we train indoors in the West, and why we train in shoes. And it's like, well, you train indoors because it's cold out, and my teachers didn't have a concept of what 25 or what less than 25 degrees is. So one of my teachers came over here, Jahari came over here a few years back, and in our summer he was there with 2 jackets and a scarf on, because 25 degrees for him is cold. Training out in Malaysia is fascinating. You are outdoors, sort of in a field. I've trained in all sorts of places. I've trained in sort of building site areas, so you get swept and you're landing on a brick, which is relatively uncomfortable. So a lot of it is done outdoors in fields, occasionally indoors, but most of the training I've done has been outdoors, sort of on grass. So it's kind of a different concept to training. In Holland, the training's done usually with the Puklang groups. It's usually small groups, so it's done. And they have kind of an attic, so it's done upstairs in the attic. And there's a small group, 4, 6 people, and you just train. Malaysia, it's a bit different because it's 35 degrees, high humidity. So you tend to train for a bit and then get your air back. There's a thing that Taangin that don't have air. So you kind of have to stop because it's just so hot and sweat's pouring off you. And you run out of air because it's just so hot. Love it though. The spirit side of Silat is kind of complicated. Some of it is just being a better person. Part of it is, from my understanding from Mahaguru, is that there are verses in the Quran that he uses that have specific uses. So when he taught me, he didn't teach me the verses of the Quran because I'm not Muslim. But what he taught me was something that is comparable, and they are kind of like, for want of a better description, mantras. They're prayers or verses that you would say to create an effect. So they kind of have different things. The bits that I particularly was interested in is the healing side, because of it's part of my job. So I want to be able to heal people better. Transferring that to the UK is kind of difficult because the culture is not so much of a belief in that kind of thing. So the Asian culture very much believes in the boogeyman, whereas the Westerners, you don't look under your bed anymore. You don't look for the ghosts and things. So people believing that is a lot more difficult. But just transferring the principles of being a good person, I try and teach that to my students, that humility, honour, respect, and then hopefully my students kind of will engage with that. I often find that if people don't really take that on board, then they don't stay as my students, and that's fine, because I want to keep myself surrounded. I've been taught by good people. I want to teach good people. So you kind of propagate that. So you teach people, if they come in angry, you can calm them down, you can soothe them, make them easier and calmer and less prone to volatility, and that's part of the martial training as well. So I try and kind of let that work its way through. In the Philippines you have things like anting-anting. In Silat you have similar things as well. The Keris, the olden Kerises are viewed as having kind of a spirit in them. So it's filled, and you would then sort of talk to the Keris and feed it and do things with it. The Kerises I have around are training Kerises, so they're empty, and they are just for training, but they have the same kind of feel as the Japanese katana or the anting-anting of the Philippines. So they have a spiritual perspective as well. Those ones, the sort of the pusaka krises, the ones that would be handed down through the family, are generally sort of kept in special places on the wall or high up. Whereas the training krises, you throw in your bag and off you go. One of the differences between sort of Malaysian silat and Indonesian silat is the use of the kris, and also the design of the kris as well. So the Malaysian kris is usually held as a pistol grip, so it's considered rude in Malaysia to point the kris at anyone. So I'm going to point it off to the side, but it's a pistol grip here, so you would hold it like you would hold a gun, generally thumb on the top. The other thing with a kris is that it's designed, if you look down the handle, to veer slightly to my left. The reason for that is the kris is a left-handed weapon, so it's a right-handed weapon, so you're supposed to hold it in your right hand, so when you stab someone, you're going to stab them in the left side of their body, so you're stabbing them in the heart. The idea of it going slightly to my left is that it would go in towards the body and in towards the heart. If you held it in your left hand, you're then more likely to stab them in the right side, and it's going to veer away. So it's a right-handed weapon, and it's a stabbing weapon, hence the term petikaman. Whereas the Indonesian krises tend to be kind of more like knives, so the kris will come out of the top of the hand there. So Malaysian kris is very much a stabbing thing. They use the scabbards as a shield, like as a blocking thing. You'd fight with the kris, so stabbing with that, and then you'd be blocking with the scabbard, the sarong. So instead of using the shield, if you don't have a shield, you'd fight. You'd be looking to stab with the kris, and then use the scabbard to protect your arm or protect your body, so you can block with that without getting cut by the kris as well. Traditional martial arts, for me, offer so much to students. There's studies been done on traditional martial arts and their value for students' learning and how it improves student grades. But it also improves confidence. I've got several people that train with me that aren't very confident. It's build them up. I've had disabled students come, kids in wheelchairs, that I've taught. Recently we had a guy who has learning difficulties, and when he first came, he didn't speak, he wouldn't make eye contact. After a year of him growing up, he's become much more vocal, almost argumentative. We've got kids that have been bullied, so it's that, just building the confidence. Because I've got a small class, you get much better contact with the teacher. You can keep an eye on them, but they get to interact with lots of people on a much better level. So traditional martial arts, I think, give you that discipline, that respect. For me, the Japanese kind of the bowing and all, I don't get on with. It doesn't work for me. One of my friends would bow to her instructor in the street. We don't really do that, but there's a respect of respecting your teacher, and I think that transmits through the rest of your life. The first time I heard of Bruce Lee, I thought he was actually an urban legend. I didn't realise he was real. So I'd already started doing martial arts. I think I'd gone through karate, judo, taekwondo phase at that point, and I thought Bruce Lee was a myth. Muhammad Ali was there, and he was exceptional. As I got a bit older, I think my main sort of sporting legend would have been Sugar Ray Leonard. Partly for that sort of just his skill, his smoothness, the ability to talk. He was a wizard in the ring. He had great skills and great intellect with it. So he was kind of the person that I would have sort of modelled myself on more as a fighter.